Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Johnny Candle here. Welcome to the second ever SCHEELS Humminbird virtual training seminar. We're going to have a little bit of fun tonight. I want to thank everybody for tuning in ahead of time. Apologize that we couldn't come to you live, but with the state of the affairs in our country right now, I think it sometimes makes sense to meet via the World Wide Web. We're going to have a fun time. We're going to learn as much as we possibly can tonight about your Humminbird Helix. A few things before we get started. I want to take a second and introduce everyone to Ben Olson. Ben Olson is the fishing specialty shop manager at the Grand Forks SCHEELS store. He is the one manning the questions and answers on the YouTube link that you folks are following along on. If you have any questions, just type them in. If Ben can answer them, he is going to. If Ben cannot answer those questions, he will pass them on to me. I will see them on my screen here in my home studio, and I will get to them as soon as I can and get an answer for you. Some of you are going to ask questions that jump way ahead. If that is the case, don't be offended when I don't answer right away. I'll just cover it when I get to that part of the training session. Also, a shout out to Shayla O'Leary. She's the events coordinator to help set this up with the help of Sarah Sanis and the SCHEELS corporate office. So if it wasn't for those two young ladies, we wouldn't be able to do this tonight. So we're going to just jump right in. A few things before I get started, specific to Humminbird Helix. I am working off of a Gen 4 with the latest software update. If you do not have the latest software update, that's okay. We'll talk about how you can get it. And you will still be able to follow along at home, but some of the things I talk about might just be in different places. Along the lines of following along at home, I know some of you are sitting in front of your Helix that's powered up, whether you're out in the garage or man cave sitting in the boat, or maybe you're on the big screen in the living room. Here's something to think about for the evening. You all will receive a link to a recorded version of the seminar. It will be the exact same thing, recorded. You can download it, follow along. What you might want to do this evening is try to follow along the best you can. But if you get lost, do not spend too much time trying to catch back up. Set the Helix off to the side, grab a notepad, take a bunch of notes, listen intently, and then tomorrow or the next day or sometime over the weekend, pull up the recorded version, then pull out your Helix unit and follow along then. It's much easier to follow along when you can start and stop, rewind, fast forward. If you get lost, back up, try it again, than it is to keep up today. I'm going to move at a fairly quick pace because we want to get through as many different menu items as we can tonight. So that's, again, just a suggestion. Maybe this evening, just set the unit down, take some notes, follow along if you can. And if you get lost, don't sweat it. All right. So let's go ahead and get fired up. First thing we're going to do is we're going to start our Humminbird Helix in the simulation mode. So I want you to watch what I do, and then I'll give you a second or so to follow along. It takes a second or two to do, but you got to act quick. When you hit the power button, you will see a menu. A short menu that will give you three choices. The middle choice that you will highlight with your keypad, your cursor pad, will say simulation mode. So the first option will say press menu to start to see startup options. You'll see the three options. You'll select the middle option and continue in simulator mode. If we're not in simulator mode, things just aren't going to function properly. We have no transducer connected. We have no GPS signal inside my steel building, and you probably don't have one at home either. You will know you are in simulator mode if you have numbers changing on your screen. If you do not have any numbers showing, then you're not in simulator mode. So I'm going to switch the camera view over, and we'll go ahead and fire up our Humminbird Helix. Again, I'll push the power button. It might take a second or two, depending on your software and how new your unit is. The first option coming here shortly, it will say press menu for startup options, and it does take a second. There it is. So menu for startup options. simulator mode, exit to continue, and then we'll let the unit catch up. I did a restore default, so I rebooted my unit before we started. That's why it's asking me to select language and water types. I'm just going to hit exit there. I know that everything is working. I have numbers changing. You might have a little bit different screen than that on your unit. Don't fret it. That part really doesn't matter. So the first thing we'll get going with, some of you might be brand new to Humminbird. Some of you may have had a Humminbird Helix for quite some time. For those of you that have had a Helix, navigating the views can be frustrating. And with Humminbird, every new screen is called a view. To navigate the views, what we're going to do is find the view button, which is up in the upper right-hand corner, and you press the view button. Every time you press the view button, the view changes, and we scroll through all of the views. There's a lot of them, somewhere between 30 and 40, depending on the unit you have. And it never fails that when you want to stop on a view, you hit the button one too many times and you go past it. If you're anything like me, when you go past that view, you get in what I call hyperdrive, and you start pushing the buttons even faster, and then you miss it again. Well, first tip on navigating your Helix unit is the exit button, which is located directly above the power key and the 3 shortcut keys. The exit button navigates the views in reverse. So if you miss a view going forward, you can just back up one by hitting the exit key. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 on navigating the views. Quickly, we will go to our main menu by hitting the menu button directly above the exit button twice. That puts us in our main menu. You can scroll across the top to the icon that looks like an eyeball, and that says views. This will give us a list of all the views in our Humminbird Helix. Over time, you will realize that many of those views you do not use. By selecting the view and then hitting your cursor, you can hide a view if you so choose. If you hide a view, when you scroll through the views the next time, that view will not be there. You're going to find out over time that half a dozen of those views are all you're going to use. And by eliminating the ones you don't, scrolling through that cycle will take a lot less time and you'll be a lot more efficient at it. So that's navigation tip number 2. The third navigation tip has to do with the 3 shortcut keys that we talked about earlier. 1, 2, 3, the white keys right above the power key. We can find a view that we like, and I'll scroll through until I find the sonar and the chart menu. So we will want the map on one side and sonar on the other. We're getting close. There it is. Sonar on one side, map on the other. That's a view I use a lot. I'm going to store that in the top shortcut key by pressing and holding until I get a beep and I see the message shortcut saved. So now, no matter where I'm at in my Helix, if I just short press or tap that top key, I go right back to the view of the sonar on one side and my chart on the other. So that's another way we can navigate. The final way that I'm going to share today to navigate through the menus, or the views, I'm sorry, is the one that I use most often. This one's kind of a secret. I've never seen it published anywhere. I have seen it once or twice on some forums on the internet, but follow along as we do this. We'll go back to the view button and we are going to press and hold the view button. We then get a drop-down menu entitled Views. Sonar views, chart views, system views, NEMA 2000 views, and radar views. Those last 2 are probably fairly meaningless to us right now in this class. Most of us are not using the NEMA 2000 system, and I would say none of us have radar attached to our Humminbird. If I want to look at a sonar view, I will hit the right arrow, and then I can select whatever sonar view I want to look at. In this case, the side imaging view, hit the right arrow key, and there we are right now on the side imaging view. So we've got navigation out of the way. I want to take a second now to make a couple quick adjustments that are going to make the screen a little bit easier for you to see. And it's going to show you one of the features of another quick menu key, for lack of a better word. What I want you to do if you're following along is short press the power button one time, and you will see a series of menu items pop up on the screen. The first two have to do with iPilot Link and an Altera trolling motor. You can trim the trolling motor up or down, or stow or deploy your Altera trolling motor. You can turn the sonar off or on. We'll talk about that a little later. I want to adjust the backlight so the unit is a little bit easier for you folks to see on camera. I think that helps a lot. You can put the unit in night mode by toggling right or left. You can turn your 360 imaging on if you have it, or you can put the unit in standby mode. What standby mode does when I hit the right cursor is makes the screen go black, but the unit is not turned off. It quits pinging, it quits displaying the information, saves a lot on battery, and keeps your sonar from interfering with other sonar. When it comes time to turn it back on, all you have to do is tap that power button one time and the screen pops right up. So if you're having battery issues, you've got a lot of units running in your boat at one time, you don't want to turn it off, so you have to wait for it to reboot on the next start, use the standby mode. So that will save a lot of grief, and it might just save your battery too. I know a lot of folks running big screen units with only one battery in the boat, they tend to run that battery way down. Standby mode will help with that a lot. So we've got through navigation, we got through the quick menu on the power key. Now I want to address how to set up your Humminbird Helix. So it does not matter what screen you're on. I want you to hit the menu button twice, and we will go to the setup tab. You will see a drop-down menu where the first choice is language. Word to the wise, skip that choice as quickly as you possibly can. You do not want to take any chances that you accidentally take that menu system out of the English language. If you do that and land on the wrong language, you could be in for one heck of a ride. I did have a gentleman at a class in Sioux Falls, South Dakota a couple years ago select Arabic, and that made for quite the interesting evening. Obviously, he couldn't follow along for the rest of the class. It took me about an hour and a half after the class was over to find a way, and I really think I just got lucky to get that unit out of Arabic. For those of you that don't know, Arabic doesn't even have an alphabet that looks like ours. We tried everything we could to put two Helix units side by side and line up all the choices, and finally made the right keystrokes to get that out of Arabic. So leave it in English unless you're very, very fluent in reading a foreign language. The second choice is that of user mode. And I do want you to make a change here for the class. Humminbird has two different user modes. They have the angler mode and they have the custom mode. When I switched it to custom, you can see that menu system kind of exploded and gave us a lot more choices. That's going to allow us to really dive into the capabilities of the Helix and make adjustments that you might not be able to make in the angler mode. For future reference, if you're looking for an adjustment and you cannot find it, before you get panicked and call Humminbird customer service, or before you call me or shoot me a private message, I want you to take a deep breath, go back to the setup tab, and make sure you are in custom mode. Don't ask me how it happens. Every now and again, the units do kick back into angler mode. It may happen while you're following along this evening. I've had it happen to me. So jump back on there, make sure you're in custom mode. That will give you those expanded menus, and you'll be able to find the adjustments that you want to make. Moving down the list, the next option is Restore Defaults. Restore Defaults is kind of a get out of jail free card. When you've got Restore Defaults selected and hit the right arrow key, it will ask you if you're sure you want to restore defaults. The answer would be yes. And that will just set your unit back to the day you took it out of the box. It will not affect any of your saved waypoints. It will not affect the software that you're running. But any setting you made, any adjustment you made, any buttons you pushed that might have kind of messed up what you thought your Helix should be doing will be reset to factory defaults. It's no different than giving your computer a hard start by pressing Control, Alt, and Delete. It just fires things up, takes it back to a spot where everything worked properly, and then you can adjust it again from there. Don't be afraid to do it. If you get in a jam and something's not right and you think you have to call Humminbird customer service, the first thing they're going to tell you to do is restore defaults anyways. So you might as well save yourself the phone call and potentially a long wait on customer service and go ahead and restore the defaults. It is absolutely amazing how many issues that can take care of. One thing to remember, you cannot break a Humminbird just by pushing too many buttons, but you can cause it to do things that you might not want it to do. So don't panic, it's not broken. Restore defaults 90% of the time is going to get it right back where you want it. Next option, format navigational directories. There's only 2 times I can think that you might want to hit the format navigation directories button. The first one is when you want to make dang sure that every waypoint in there is no longer in there. When would I do that? I sell a boat every year full of Humminbird electronics. I delete all my waypoints from my Humminbird every year when I sell my boat. No one pays extra for the waypoints, although I can be bought. For those of you that are interested, shoot me an offer on Facebook and we'll see if you can get close to what I might want for my waypoints. But otherwise, I don't share them with too many people. So when you format that directory, you are wiping those waypoints out forever. The other time you may want to format a navigation directory is if you get some corrupt data somehow in your digital storage media on your Humminbird head unit. I haven't heard of this very often. It can happen when someone shares waypoints or maybe a digital map with you. You can get some corrupt data in there, and the only way to get that off that storage permanently is to format that navigation directory. One thing to remember, when you store data digitally and hit the delete button, you really don't delete the data. You give that unit permission to overwrite the data, whether that's a computer hard drive, a flash drive, an SD card. You're really not taking anything off. You're giving permission to overwrite it. So there is a chance, if all you hit is delete, that you can get data back. But once you reformat that directory, you have lost whatever was stored on there forever. So again, don't hit that button by accident. You're going to be very disappointed. The next option is digital readouts. And there's several different ways to view digital data on your Humminbird. The factory default is overlay mode. When you're in overlay mode, you will see in the lower left-hand corner a series of numbers. There's 4 numbers. The top one is feet. The next one is miles per hour or speed. The third one is temperature. And the fourth one is time. These 4 pieces of data will always be in the lower left-hand corner. They will always be in that order, and they will always be that size. You cannot change them. You can turn them off, the other direction, and make them go away by scrolling through with your cursor pad. Or you can change them to boxes. When we change to boxes, we now have fully customizable digital data. The way we change that is to scroll down one choice to edit data boxes and hit the right arrow key. When we hit the right arrow key, you will now see the 6 boxes listed on your Humminbird Helix screen. If you want to change the data, let's say we want to change the data in box number 3, we would go down to data box number 3, hit the right arrow, and it gives us all our choices. So we can maybe come down here to time and date, and we want to put the date there. So we select date, highlight that box changed to date. We can hit exit and go back. And now we've got all our customizable data. Things that I like to view on my unit, if I was setting this up, Folks, they call these depth finders for a reason, so you should probably have the depth up there. That's usually my number one category. Number two, I usually put speed second. The third one, I usually put water temperature. I do have the time and date most of the time on my graph. From time to time, I will put my current position. And then other piece of data that I feel is very important to look at all the time is voltage. I like to have voltage on the screen. If my Humminbird starts acting up on me, starts showing me things that don't quite make sense, most often it's because my voltage has dropped and I don't have the proper amount of voltage to make the unit work correctly. So having voltage on the screen can be very, very, very beneficial. You'll also notice the next choice below edit data boxes gives me another option to edit my data boxes, but it throws the word navigation in there. When your Humminbird is in navigation mode, the Helix gives you the option to change the data based on the fact that you are now navigating to a spot. Now, what does navigation mode mean? It means that we selected a waypoint from our waypoint list, or we put our cursor somewhere on a chart and told the Humminbird to go to that spot. We want the Humminbird to navigate for us. How far away is it? How long is it going to take to get there? How far off course have we become? And those are all things that we can show in those data boxes if we choose to. So you may want to change the information in the data boxes while you're navigating. One thing to remember, if you have an iPilot Link trolling motor, and you turn on autopilot mode or spot lock mode, your Humminbird is now navigating, right? Autopilot is nothing more than a series of waypoints in front of your boat that you're playing connect the dots with. And spot lock is one waypoint that the trolling motor is trying to drive to and stay to as close as it possibly can. So that's navigation mode. When you're in those modes, these data boxes are going to change and show you what you have selected in your navigation data boxes. So if you want them to match, make them match. If you don't, that's okay. It's all up to you. Next choice, local time zone. For those of you that do not know, a Humminbird GPS does not automatically select the time zone you're in. You have to do it manually. So you need to go down to the local time zone and toggle using your left or right and select Central Standard Time if that's where you are. That's where I'm speaking from today. The next choice is Daylight Savings Time. Don't forget to turn that on. I know a few tournament pros over the years that wish they would have made those adjustments before weigh-in. Cost them a little bit of money. You can also turn off your sonar. Why would we want to turn off sonar? Well, sometimes you're getting interference between a bow unit and a transom unit. The sonar beams will cross in deeper water. You can go to the back of the boat if you're fishing in the bow, or go to the bow if you're fishing in the back, and just turn off your sonar. The unit stays on, your GPS still works. You can still view sonar from the other sources if you have everything networked together, but it'll get rid of that interference for you. Chirp configuration. This is something that I don't mess with a whole lot because I don't fully understand chirp, and I don't fully understand what might happen if I adjust the chirp configuration. But let me explain to you quickly, as easily as I can, what chirp is. Traditionally, for years, sonar operated on a single frequency. So, for example, 200 kilohertz was kind of the gold standard for many, many years for 2D sonar pictures. Well, several years ago, new technology became affordable in consumer-owned sonar to use what's called CHIRP. It stands for Compressed High Intensity Radar Pulse. What the engineers do now, instead of pinging or sending one sound wave into the water, they're sending a range. So instead of pinging 200 kilohertz, it may ping a range from 180 to 220 kilohertz. That potentially eliminates missing targets. It allows us to display smaller targets. It shows us better target separation. and we can get more detail out of what's on the bottom or vegetation. It's really improved 2D sonar as well as side and down imaging, but I don't know enough about it to change the way that those sounds go in the water. By going into the chirp configuration choice, you can make a broader range, a narrower range, and adjust the chirp. And again, not knowing what that's going to do has kept me from making those adjustments. So I would recommend for now, if you want to play with it, go ahead, but I would just be guessing if I told you how to adjust the chirp. Next choice, demonstration mode. We can skip that because when you're not in simulator mode, that won't even show up. Sound control, we can turn the beeps off. Probably should have talked about that before we started pushing buttons all day, but the beeps are not all that bad. When you hit a button and you hear it beep, you know that it worked. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the end of the setup tab. Now, some of you may have had some options in there to adjust units of measure. And I'm going to show those of you with the newest software where we can adjust units of measure. We'll go back to that main menu tab, slide over one tab to the right where it says data sources. The first choice is units of measure. We can hit the right-hand arrow key and it gives us all the choices for units of measure that we may want to adjust. Exit out of that. The next choice, data offsets. These are all the different offsets that we can make in our Humminbird. We can adjust our depth, we can adjust the heading, and a bunch of other things that, again, water temperature, NEMA, and your STW adjustments. The one I want to focus on right now is the depth adjustment. I usually add 1.5 feet to my depth reading. And if you watch the number here, it changes as I change the depth adjustment. So why do you add 1.5 feet, Johnny, to your depth? Well, here's why. Your transducer does not float on the surface of the water. And for that reason, sonar is not truly measuring depth. It's measuring the distance from that transducer to the bottom of the lake or to a fish. It's not that hard to measure how far your transducer is below the surface of the water. I use my fish ruler. I just clip it over the transducer, put my thumb at the water line, pull it out of the water, and see that it's 17, 18 inches when my boat's at rest on a nice calm day. And I go in and I add that to my depth offset. It's really, really simple. It gives me a much more accurate reading of my depth. You don't have to do it, but just understand that when your depth finder says 10 feet, if you don't have that depth adjustment set, you're really not in 10 feet. You're in water deeper than 10 feet because of where your transducer is mounted. Next choice is changing your digits. You can adjust them from small tenths to large tenths to no tenths. I like to see the decimal numbers, but smaller. There's some GPS settings here where we can adjust the format of our waypoints. I would suggest not adjusting that. I leave it just the way it is, degrees, decimal degrees. GPS output, you can turn it higher or lower, but the 5 hertz provides pretty good performance. And you can turn GPS GLONASS on or off. I do not know what all the letters of GLONASS stand for. It's some kind of acronym, but I do know what it does. If you turn GLONASS on, you are now giving your Humminbird Helix permission to track Russian satellites. I'm not making that up, folks. I'm absolutely legit. The US has 23, 25, 26 satellites in space, and the Russians have close to the same amount. There are times and places where tracking the Russian satellites will give you a much more accurate GPS reading, but I don't know when and where that is, and I don't turn the GLONASS on. The other reason I don't turn it on is I don't want a bunch of guys in black suits and dark sunglasses waiting for me at the boat ramp when I get back from fishing at the end of the day. Who knows who's watching who when we start tracking satellites from another country. So again, There's a bunch of NMEA stuff down here at the bottom of the data sources, and we're just going to ignore that for right now. Very, very few people are using the NEMA systems from their Humminbird Helix. If you have specific questions on that, please fire away, shoot them off to me. I will do all I can to get them answered for you. You can either private message me or I'll give my email address out at the end of the seminar tonight. So stick around and I'll get that for you. So that is the basic setup of a Humminbird Helix depth finder. Again, if we have any questions as you're rolling along, just keep firing them off to Ben. I'm sure he's doing a great job so far of answering. And if you have any that Ben can't get to, he'll go ahead and pass them right through to me. So the next thing I want to do is start getting into how the menus work with your Humminbird Helix. And to do this, I'd like you to go to a 2D sonar screen. So we'll press and hold, and we'll choose sonar, press and hold view, choose sonar, hit the right arrow key, 2D view. And we'll tap the menu button one time. When we do this, we get what is called an express menu for that screen. So right now, we are looking at the most commonly changed items for 2D sonar. The first choice is sensitivity. It's obvious that that's going to be adjusted fairly often. Every time you go to deeper water, shallower water, cleaner or dirty water, you may want to adjust your sensitivity. Well, how do we adjust our sensitivity? What I like to do is turn my sensitivity up till my screen looks really cluttered, and then I just back that down slowly till I get a picture that I can manage. I don't want it to be too little, not too much. Somewhere right in that range looks pretty good to me. The next choice is contrast. One thing you need to realize, the difference between sensitivity and contrast. When you turn up sensitivity or down sensitivity, you are changing how much data your unit is displaying on the screen. When we change contrast, we're not changing how much data is there, we're just changing how it appears. So you can tell nothing comes and goes, it just changes colors, right? I'm going to tell you straight up right from the beginning, leave it on 20 out of 40. Right in the middle is going to be the best bang for your buck. Back to the quick menu push, upper and lower ranges. Those are pretty self-explanatory. I usually run the upper range on 0, lower range on auto. I like to run my chart speed relatively fast when I'm in 2D mode. I'll jack it all the way up to number 10. The reason I run chart speed on 10 is because the faster the old data leaves the screen, the faster new data can come on the screen. That's the only way I can get new data is for the old data to leave. So we'll run it as fast as it will go. And the last choice is your sonar colors. I think there are 12 color palettes. My color of choice is sonar palette number 1. The reason for that is many, many moons ago when Lowrance came out with color sonar, we all started with color palette number 1, but there's many. Black backgrounds, greens, blues, reds. You can scroll through them all. Actually, there's more than 12. I'm sorry. It looks like 19 different color palettes. I will say this, the ones with the black background work very, very well when you're fishing after dark. It keeps from getting that night blindness when you look at a bright light and then raise your head to look into the dark. And there are other colors on there that you might see better than others, especially if you have some kind of color deficiency. If you can't see reds and greens or blues or whatever, scroll through all those different color palettes until you find a color that you like. What I want to do now is I want to switch to a side imaging screen. So we'll press and hold view, go down to sonar, right arrow, and we'll go to side imaging. If you do not have side imaging, you can follow along in down imaging. Once we get to this, again, short press, menu, you'll see first choice, sensitivity. Again, same as sensitivity with 2D. We're going to skip the SI enhance. We're going to go down to our side imaging range. Default is at 100 feet. I'm going to tell you that I run mine usually at about 70 to 75 feet. I do not like to try to look at too much when I'm looking at my side imaging. You're trying to look at 300 or 400 feet in a 10-inch screen. It just doesn't work out. Back to the menu. Side imaging side. You do not have to look at both side imaging views at the same time. Say I'm going down the shoreline and I want to see between my boat and the shore, and the boat is on the right, or the shore is on the right-hand side of the boat. I can choose just to look to the right. Ignore the left. I know I'm not going to be fishing out there. I'm focusing on the shoreline to my right. That gives me the whole screen now to look at 70 feet. And maybe, again, I might want to stretch that range out a little when I have only one side present. So you do not have to look at both sides. Chart speed, again, when I'm looking at side imaging, I do not run my chart speed at 10 very often. I match my chart speed to my boat speed. So my boat speed right now in simulator mode is 5.6 miles an hour. When I slow this chart speed down, you probably noticed that the view gets a heck of a lot cleaner, crisper. Things are not elongated. Humminbird either got really, really lucky, or they did a great job of making the chart speed match the boat speed, be the perfect formula for how to get a really good image. If I'm pulling bottom bouncers and spinners at 1 mile an hour, I set my chart speed at 1 mile an hour. If I'm pulling crankbaits at 2.5, I'll set it at 2. If I'm scanning for fish at 4 miles an hour, I'll set it at 4. So matching boat speed and chart speed and side imaging is a great way to set things up. SI colors, again, same thing as sonar colors. Dynamic contrast. I like to run with my dynamic contrast on. And what you're going to notice when I turn the dynamic contrast on, my picture gets a lot lighter. But what that allows me to do is run my sensitivity a little bit higher without blowing out the picture. So I just turned my sensitivity up from 10 to 15 without making that screen so bright that I can't pick details out. So the dynamic contrast allows us to run our sensitivity higher, see smaller targets, see more targets, still keep that nice crisp image without blowing it up. So we did skip one thing. We skipped the oh, I'm sorry. I think I missed, no, it's under enhance, my bad. Side imaging enhance. We want to go ahead and pull that menu up. And again, you'll see sensitivity. There's a reason you can adjust sensitivity in so many places, folks. You should be adjusting your sensitivity quite often. Contrast, again, changes the colors, but not the data. Some people like to turn their contrast way down. Some people like to turn the contrast up. I try not to leave it much higher than 10, maybe 11 or 12, somewhere in the middle. Sharpness. When you turn sharpness on, it starts to pixelate the image. Some folks prefer the pixelated look. And as I turn the sharpness up really, really high, to me, it makes things fuzzy. It makes things a little harder to interpret. So I run my sharpness off. I do not turn the sharpness on. Contour mode. Contour mode is very helpful to some and not to others. But before we discuss contour mode, I'll show you what we're explaining here. On-side imaging, your boat is in the middle, right here, the line in the middle. That's the path of your boat. The dark band down the center is the water column. And if I would take my unit and turn it sideways, I now have down imaging, okay? But because I have it flat, it's side imaging, okay? If the water column being there is confusing to you, you can turn contour mode on, and what it does is it puts the two sides of your picture together in the middle and takes out the water column. That's all it does. So contour mode off, you see the water column. Contour mode on, you don't see the water column. So that's contour mode. One last thing before we leave the express menus. I want you to press and hold your view button. I want you to go to the chart mode. select a chart and a sonar view. So we have a split screen. So I have chart and 2D. The short press, or the one press of the menu button, is effective for the active screen in split screen mode. So right now I have the map screen active. How do I know the map screen is active? There's a little yellow arrow at the upper left-hand corner of the map screen. That way I know that the map screen is active. So if I hit the menu button, my active pane is now highlighted with a yellow band, and it says at the top that the active pane is to the right side. If I want to make adjustments to the sonar screen, all I have to do is use my cursor, select the left side, my menu just switched to make my active screen the 2D sonar, and I have that quick menu for my sonar screen. The second choice is the split position. They do not have to be 50-50. Right now they're 50-50. There's 60-40, 70-30, or 80-20. I can go the other way and make the chart bigger than sonar. A lot of folks don't realize that you can adjust the split position when you're on the split screen. So that's that. Now, we're going to go to the full-blown menu now. We're past the express menu on the sonar screens. We will go to the full-blown menu, so we'll hit menu twice. And I want to scroll all the way to the left. We'll not go to the alarms. Alarms are something pretty self-explanatory. You can figure those out on your own. We're going to look at the sonar menu. The first option says display spectrum. This has to do with what you are actually seeing on the screen. If you scroll through there, you'll notice it says wide, narrow, and full. The factory default is full or medium, depending on the software you have. That's what I choose to run mine at. I have not noticed a difference when I just change that display spectrum enough to make me want to take it off of full. So leave it on full. Chirp display frequencies. We're going to get into that here in a little bit, but you can change the frequencies that you're viewing on the screen in this menu. But we're going to talk about that a little bit later and make it a little easier to understand than through the main menu here. There's a 360 frequency display. We don't really need to talk about that right now. Surface clutter. I think you might be able to see it up here in the upper left-hand corner. There's a band very close to the surface of the water. This is known as surface clutter. We can turn the filter up or down to make that worse or less. If you want to make it go away, turn it down. You can see it got a little less dense. I like to see a little bit of surface clutter. I leave mine at 5. If you filter that out too much, there's a chance that you could be filtering out stuff like that right there, which might actually be a cloud of bait and not interference. Humminbird depth finders have 2 modes of use. They have clear mode and max mode. This is known as switch fire. What the clear mode is, folks, is a set of filters predetermined by Humminbird to clean up the sonar signal returns so it creates a picture that's easier to interpret and, quite frankly, a little more enjoyable to look at in the eyes of a lot of users. Clear mode gives you a nice white crisp background and some really, really nice arches. Max mode, on the other hand, and you might be able to see it change here on the screen, max mode is unfiltered raw sonar data. So what you're looking at in max mode are the unfiltered sonar signal returns. If you are a Lowrance user for many, many years coming over to Humminbird, you're probably going to like max mode a little bit better because it looks more like what you're used to. Okay. What I follow are some simple rules of thumb when to use clear mode and when to use max mode. I use clear mode when I am in shallow water, so less than 10 feet unless the bottom is extremely hard. Some days I may have to go to clear mode as deep as 20 feet. When I'm in dirty water, I will use clear mode because if the water is turbid, maybe a big algae bloom, a lot of sediment in the water, Max mode picks up too many of those little particles and it makes it hard to see what's going on. And if I'm in moving water, I will use clear mode. If you're fishing in a river, a lot of currents swirling around, all those currents are messing up those sound waves and creating some distortion. And clear mode will do a much better job of weeding through those mixed up signals and giving you a much better picture. Max mode, on the other hand, deeper water, cleaner water, and water that's not moving. I do all I can to use max mode till I absolutely can't. I like more information on the screen. I like to personally be able to determine what I'm looking at, make those distinguishing judgments on my own. I don't like to rely on filters unless I absolutely have to. You will find when you play around with max mode and clear mode that when you use clear mode, you're probably going to have to increase your sensitivity quite a bit. When you're in max mode, you will find yourself running with a little bit less sensitivity than you're used to. And that almost makes sense because the two modes overlap in the middle. Clear mode maxed out on sensitivity, max mode turned down on sensitivity. They overlap and provide dang near the exact same picture. Water column sensitivity is something new. Humminbird has found a way now to allow us to adjust the sensitivity of our sonar inside the water column without affecting the sensitivity, the sensitivity settings that we're using to determine bottom content and bottom hardness. So you set your sensitivity, especially on side imaging or down imaging, and you're really, really liking the way the bottom looks, but you've got a little bit of fuzz on the screen in the water column, or you want more sensitivity possibly in the water column, you can go into water column sensitivity and set it from 1 to 3, or turn it off, or -1, -2, or -3. So it gives you an option to adjust, again, that water column, create that picture independently from the picture that's showing you bottom hardness and bottom composition. We have some presets in sonar for imaging. You can use the increased detail presets, which is the default, or you can use a preset for increased depth and range. All this does is it tweaks your unit to a predetermined manner set up by the Humminbird engineers to provide what you're looking for. Most of us would rather have increased detail than increased depth. Okay, most freshwater anglers are not fishing in any water that would actually be considered deep. 100 feet of water sounds deep to us. To a Humminbird, 100 feet of water is not very deep. I would not turn up the increased depth or range until I'm trying to look much further than 100 feet, either left or right, or in the depth column. Side imaging background pinging. What the side imaging background pinging refers to is when is the side imaging sound wave entering the water and when isn't it. When a Humminbird is in normal operation mode and background pinging is turned off. If you have older software, this would also be referred to as jigging mode, turned off. When you're in the mode that keeps background pinging off, all of the sound waves are leaving the transducer every time it pings. So you've got 83 and 200 for 2D sonar, 455, 800, and 1200 megahertz for side and down imaging. When you turn background pinging on, it shuts off the side imaging pings. Why is that important? Well, the more things going on in your helix at one time, the harder it has to work and the less detailed of an image it can draw. The reason being is it's drawing all 5 of those images at one time. There's an image for every frequency. And whether you're viewing it or not, your Humminbird is drawing it. If you turn background pinging on, your unit quits drawing the imaging pictures. So no more side imaging picture is being drawn, which allows your helix to use more of its computing power to focus on 2D sonar. They called it jigging mode in the past because it made it much easier to see your jig right below your boat. Okay, you get a much better 2D image if background pinging is turned off. One thing you have to be careful for though, if you are driving around scanning for fish and you like to switch back and forth between 2D mode and side imaging mode, you will want background pinging turned on, because when you go to the side imaging mode, the picture will already be there. You'll have a little bit of history. So if you drive by something and you go, oh, I want to see that in SI mode, SI view, and switch, it'll be there. If you have background pinging turned off, it does not begin drawing that side imaging picture until you switch to the side imaging screen. So there's no history there. You could miss something. Fish ID. Fish ID is something that we're going to turn off. Fish ID is not what we want to learn. I apologize that we're not talking about interpreting sonar signals right now, but trust me, leave Fish ID off. Do yourself a favor. Fish ID is software that tells us, oh, there's a signal return. It's not connected to the bottom. Draw a fish symbol there. You could drive over the world's biggest brush pile and see 4,000 fish ID symbols and fish there all day, and you're literally fishing for a brush pile. It's a good way to waste a lot of time, and we don't want to do that. Since we're not going to use Fish ID sensitivity no longer matters. The real-time sonar window, quickly, I'll show you what that is, and I'll explain to you why I turn it off. I will turn it on for now, and you can see it on the right-hand side of the sonar screen. This is a vertical flasher right here. Obviously, my sensitivity is turned up really high, but it's showing us the same thing in a vertical flasher mode that we would see in our scrolling liquid crystal view. I would rather have more history there, so I turn that off and make it go away. The RTS window, we can turn it off, and now you'll see I just have more screen to show my standard scrolling view of what's going on my sonar page. Back to where we were. Bottom view, just leave it in structure ID. That one's pretty straightforward. Zoom width has to do with when we're looking at a split screen zoom on our Helix. I usually run mine in medium. That's just how wide of a picture is it showing you of the zoomed in area on the bottom. Medium seems to be a good catch-all. The depth lines are the lines that go across your sonar view, so you can guess how deep things are without looking at the number in the corner. Same thing for your SI range lines. I usually turn those on. It's nice when you're looking at side imaging to have the vertical lines left and right that help you determine how far away from the boat a target is. Your frequency label down here in the corner, when the simulation prompt goes away, you'll see it right down here. That's so we know what frequency you're viewing, and we're going to talk about frequencies here again in a little bit. A noise filter. Humminbird has a built-in software noise filter that allows us to correct or fix our sonar image if we have electrical interference. How do you know you have electrical interference? Well, you have a beautiful picture, you turn your bilge pump on, and all of a sudden you get noise. Or you trim your motor up and down and you get noise. Or you honk the horn on your boat and you get noise. That means you're getting electrical interference with other things in your boat. The noise filter will help you get rid of that, but it's a Band-Aid, it's not a fix. I'm going to recommend, if you are having a lot of problems with electrical interference, that you take a really, really hard look at how your boat is wired. Maybe you need a different battery. I'm running a lithium battery in my boat now to drive all of my marine electronics. I use the lithium batteries from Amped Outdoors. I've been very happy with what I've seen so far from them. A much cleaner electric, and it's a standalone battery, right? It's got a lot more amp hours than most of the other batteries I've used. I don't have it connected to anything else in the boat because it's got enough power to drive my electronics all day long. So I'm eliminating the feedback from pumps and horns and motor trim switches and all that kind of stuff. You could have bad connectors. You could have old wire. Any of that can cause your Humminbird to not function the way we want it to. So you might want to take a good hard look at that along the way. Max depth, we'll leave that at auto. Water type, obviously we'll leave that at fresh. Connected transducer is very important. This is a side imaging unit. It's a Gen 4, and you can see here that it says connected transducer, high, wide, mega S imaging plus, side imaging plus. So that's a mega plus transducer with high, wide chirp. That is the exact transducer that I will have connected to this when I put it in my boat. If I would have selected the wrong transducer, maybe I would select the, let's just pick one, the 83200 mega side imaging. That is not mega plus. That is not the high wide transducer. And it may give me a picture, it may not. And if it does, it's probably not going to give me the right picture. So all of the Helix units will drive just about every transducer, but you have to tell it what transducer is connected in order to get the best picture. So again, I would want to put this to the right. Oh, if I can find it again. There's a lot of choices. We'll go back the other way. High, wide. Come on. Right there. High, wide, mega S imaging plus. Perfect. How do you know what transducer you have, folks? On the end of the cord where it plugs in, there's a little yellow tag that will tell you exactly what transducer you have. If you're not for certain what you're using, look right there. It'll guide you in the right direction. Side imaging orientation. I'm kind of glad that this is a North Dakota seminar, but I guarantee you we've got some good friends from Minnesota in the class. And this is all in fun, guys. I'm not taking shots over the bow here, but I call this the Minnesota button. Side imaging orientation is based on the fact that you drive your boat with the pointy end going first. Minnesota anglers have this strange tendency to put the square end first, especially at fishing speeds. You guys love to back troll over there, and God bless you for it. You take waves over the back of your boat, but man, you put that boat right over the fish and you seem to catch them pretty good. So don't knock it till you tried it. Keep back trolling. But if you're going to back troll and look at side imaging, it's oriented the wrong way. So you're going to want to come down to this choice and you're going to want to put it in reverse. What that will do is flip-flop the two side images. So when you're going backwards, you're now viewing side imaging the right way. If you have a brother-in-law that never brings you a nice Christmas present, doesn't bring dessert when you invite him over for family dinner, this is the brother-in-law button. Get in his boat when he's not looking, switch it to reverse, go out fishing with him and cast off the wrong side of the boat because only you know it's the right side. He won't catch, you will, and maybe he'll bring a nice apple pie to the next Christmas dinner. When you go forward, don't forget to switch it back to normal. The color bar, in your full 2D sonar screen, you will see a bar of colors on the right-hand side. That tells you the strength of signal return. Strongest colors will be at the top. Weakest signal colors will be at the bottom. I usually turn that off because it gives me more of my screen back to view when I'm looking at sonar. The temperature graph, again, another one of those things that's duplicate information. When you turn the temperature graph on full screen sonar, it'll put a black line right about here on your sonar screen. When that black line goes up, the water temperature went up. When that black line goes down, the water temperature went down. I told you I don't like duplicate information. I've got a water temperature box right here. When that number gets bigger, folks, the water temperature went up. When that number gets smaller, the water temperature went down. We don't need to have that duplicated. I would suggest running one or the other. And then we can put our sonar unit into ice mode. That's the last choice in the sonar tab. Couple of things I want to show about sonar quickly, and then we're going to take a little break and we'll come back and we'll talk some navigation, some mapping, and some iPilot link and auto chart to wrap up the class. But for right now, let's pick a side imaging view. So we'll push the view button, sonar, and we'll go down to SI view. I talked earlier about sensitivity and how we can adjust sensitivity. Last night, this didn't work. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. The plus and minus button, and mine is not working again. Simulator mode just does not seem to like my depth finder for some reason. But when you're in a sonar screen and everything is functioning properly, the plus button and the minus button will increase and decrease your sensitivity. You do not have to go to the actual sonar menu to adjust sensitivity, right? We should just be able to hit the plus or minus buttons. The other button that is a nice shortcut on any sonar screen is the check mark button. We talked about adjusting frequencies. If you want to adjust frequencies, you can just hit the check mark button. That is working perfectly. So there's 400 kilohertz, there's 800 kilohertz, and there's my Mega Plus imaging. It does not take long to figure out which image is the one you want to look at. Don't get hung up on what these numbers say down here. Get hung up on what image looks the best to you, okay? So we've got plus and minus for sensitivity. We've got the check mark for frequency. Last thing, any sonar screen, if you want to put a waypoint on anything you see, just press the cursor pad. That will put your cursor up on the screen, whether it's side imaging, down imaging, or 2D sonar. Move the cursor to what you want to put a waypoint on. Down here is a nice little rock pile. Hit the mark button twice, and you now saved a waypoint where that rock pile is. So you can do that on 2D sonar. You mark a school of fish behind your boat, move your cursor to that little group of fish, hit the mark button twice, and you have now saved a waypoint right on the spot where you saw those fish. Last thing before we take a break, I mentioned this to everyone else. We talked a lot about sonar. I showed you how to adjust your settings, but you're going to notice that I did not give anybody a number to set their settings to. I didn't give you a sensitivity number. I told you a couple contrast numbers that I like the way they look. But here's the point I want to make. There are no such thing as magic settings. I hope no one taking this class has gone online in some of the chat groups or forums across the country and written somebody a check for $80 for a sheet of paper that gives you a list of magical settings, because they don't exist. You cannot set up a Humminbird over the internet like I am doing right now and guarantee the end user that it's going to be perfect. My boat is rigged different than your boat, is rigged different than your neighbor's boat, which is rigged different than another boat that came from your same dealership. You can rig two boats exactly alike, and they're not going to be exactly alike because the wire might not be the same, might not be the same distance, you might not use the same connectors. All of that stuff comes into play. And then when you're on the water, the conditions are never exactly the same. You might have clean water one day, dirty water the next, deep water one day, shallow water the next, big waves one day, calm water the next. All of that comes into play as to what the best settings are for the day. And to top it all off, folks, the way your Humminbird appears is 100% objective. It's objective. I can't tell you what looks good to you, and you can't tell me what looks good to me. If I get in your boat and I see something drastic, I would say something like, you may want to bump up your sensitivity a little bit, or you might want to turn down your contrast. But if your answer is to me, hey, I can see all kinds of fish on that screen right now, I'm going to take a step back, I'm going to shut my trap, and I'm going to let you fish with the settings however you want. The only person that has to be happy with how your Humminbird looks is you. Again, there's no such thing as magic settings. Anybody that's telling you for 50, 75, 100 bucks, they can give you a list of magic settings, please don't take their money, okay? Learn to push buttons, learn to make adjustments, learn to make that screen look the way you want the screen to look, and go find fish and catch fish with your Humminbird. I'm going to take, let's take about a 10-minute break, 5 to 10, 7 minutes, somewhere in there. The folks running the show in the corporate office. We'll let you know approximately when I'm going to come back so you can get back in front of the screen. But go get yourself a drink of water. Go get a new pencil or pen because you wore one out taking notes. Take a little restroom break. And we'll be back in, like I said, 7 to 10 minutes, and we'll pick right up where we left off. Thanks again. Much as I hate to admit it, I was having a lot of fun listening to that music. That's a pretty good jam that they selected for us back there at SCHEELS. So we're rocking and rolling now. I apologize. We had a little technical difficulties. You guys were seeing some imagery on my camera. I did not even notice that we were showing you all the technical specs. So I apologize. I am a fairly good angler. I am fairly bad at technology. So hopefully that's the only thing. Wish someone might have said that to me a little sooner, but that's all right. So we got through sonar, we got through settings, we got through all that stuff. I haven't had too many major questions pop up on the screen yet, so that's good or bad. We'll figure that out as we go. Now we want to start talking a little bit about our chart settings and some navigation stuff. So let's hit the view button and hold it. We'll pick our chart view. That means map. That's what that stands for in Humminbird language. The word chart and the word map are the same thing. Again, menu button one time. There's not a whole lot of stuff on the chart screen. That's kind of nice because there's not a whole lot we do with the chart screen. Usually zoom in, zoom out. You do that with the plus or minus keys. You can cursor to the waypoint. When you do that, it just gives you a list of waypoints and you pick which one you want, move your cursor there, and then you can navigate to that waypoint. That's all that setting is. You can save your current tracks, clear your current tracks. If you want to save a track, that way it's there the next time you go. Humminbirds have a limited amount of data that your track will store, and you can get to the end. When you get to the end, it will tell you you're getting to the end, and it starts eating that track from the other end, just like the old Pac-Man game, right? Waka, 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 and it chews it right up. If you want that trail there to follow it for navigation, you need to save it. Maybe you made a good trolling pass somewhere. You want to follow it again. You need to save that trail. When you get down to the end, clearing the current track is not a bad way to go either. So let's talk about some navigation stuff now. Let's get into the nitty gritty of GPS. For those of you that don't know, we talked about saving a waypoint. The mark button twice saves a waypoint at the current position of your boat. If you move the cursor anywhere on your map screen and hit mark twice, it saves a waypoint where the cursor is as well. So that's the way to save waypoints. Menu twice. Scroll across the top to nav. Now let's go to chart first, since we talked about chart a little bit. You'll see first option is map source. If you have a Lake Master map in your Humminbird Helix, you want to select auto for map source. That tells the Humminbird Helix to select the Lake Master map. It does not matter which slot you have that map chip in. It will read both slots. If you choose to use Contour XD, which is Navionics mapping for those of you that didn't know, or the Humminbird base map, you can scroll through till you find all those different versions. Sometimes you'll find one map is better for you than the other. What I'm going to tell you is 99% of the time, you're going to want to use that Lake Master cartography. So you're going to want your unit set in auto. We are going to skip the set simulation position for now. We will do that a little bit later. Chart orientation. You can see here, I have mine in north up. When I am navigating, driving my boat, I switch that to head up. North up is great, sitting in the living room, sitting in the garage, simulating like we are now. That way the map looks just like a paper map. Head up places the direction I'm aiming right at the top of the screen. If I see a waypoint I want to steer to, or if I am driving to a piece of structure on the lake chart, I just drive towards it. I don't have to think I'm going south, I need to turn left, right? That gets confusing. Navigation aids on bird's eye view. Most of you can just ignore this unless you actually use the bird's eye view, and then you can have navigational aids appear on your bird's eye view. North reference, leave that at true. Don't go to magnetic. It tilts everything a couple degrees. The north up indicator, I have it turned on. That way I know which way north is all the time. If I'm in head up, this arrow is pointing towards true north all the time. Auto zoom and auto range. These are kind of nice to talk about. Auto zoom is a feature based on speed. When you are going slower, the zoom tightens up. So you're looking at the map closest to your boat. As you speed up, the auto zoom feature zooms out further and further and further. So you can see more of what's around you at higher speeds. That makes sense. You want to see more map the faster you're driving. When you approach a spot that you want to stop or slow down, as you slow down, that map zooms in again to your current position. Auto range, very, very similar, only instead of zooming out and zooming in, it moves your boat on the screen. So in the middle of the screen at slow speeds, as you speed up, your boat icon drops towards the bottom to show more lake in front of you and less lake behind you, because the faster you go, the less important it is what you're past, and the more important it is as to what's in front of you. Those are things you might want to check out when you're out on the water driving around. They're pretty unique and pretty fun features. Vessel offset has to do with if you are 100% certain your boat is not in the right spot on your map, you can adjust the offset. I trust my GPS. I'm not going to mess with that very often. Offset speed is a way to allow you to tell your GPS that your boat is going faster than it really is. If you own a Ranger boat, that might be real interesting to you. No, I'm just kidding. Ranger owners, love you guys. Ranger makes a good product. It just happens to be slow. That's okay. Just kidding. Just kidding. The latitude and longitude grid, if you want latitude and longitude laid over the top of your map, you can turn it on. And that's all we've got under the chart menu. Now we'll go to navigation. Lots of settings under the navigation tab. And I think a lot of people, they get all caught up in how well Humminbird does with sonar, side imaging, down imaging, all that fun stuff, but not so caught up into what the GPS actually does. And the GPS and the waypoint management system on a Humminbird Helix is fairly powerful. First option is your current track. If you select that and hit the right arrow key, this is where you can save your track. You can clear your track. You can stop tracking if you want. And you can adjust the appearance of your track by selecting appearance and hit the right arrow. You can make it visible or hidden. You can pick what style of line you use, wide, thin, dotted, breadcrumb trails, right? You can pick colors. There's a lot of different colors. And then, of course, don't forget to save your changes. If you don't save your changes, you're going to have to go adjust all of that stuff again. Waypoints, routes, and tracks. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this. This is Humminbird's waypoint management system. And when you enter this menu, you will see several options. The first option is a sort option. We can sort our waypoint list many, many ways. Alphabetically, beginning to end to beginning, newest to oldest, oldest to newest, by how far away they are from our current position, or by what icon we used to name the waypoint. We'll get to why sorting is important here in a section. Next choice is options. First option says new, so we'll select new. We can create a new group, we'll talk about in a second, a new waypoint, a new route, or a new eye track. We're going to talk about groups and waypoints. Creating routes is pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to let you guys explore that on your own just to save time. Creating a new waypoint, I get asked about this a lot. Where do I go to make a new waypoint? Well, right here it is. Hit the right arrow key. You can name your waypoint. You can select what icon your new waypoint will use. You can select if the icon will be visible or hidden. And then north and west, hit the right arrow key. Scroll up and down through the numbers to adjust the numbers. Press the check mark to save. Go down to the next option. Do the same. And then at the very bottom, do not forget to save your waypoint. It will tell you the time and date that it was created. So that's a good thing to know as well. Also under options, new, it says create a new group. And I want to talk a second about what a group would do. When you select create a new group, you can name your group. You can make that group visible or hidden, and then you select items from your chart to add to that group. So why would we want to save waypoints as groups? First thing you need to know, when a Humminbird Helix redraws a map, it redraws everything visible or not visible to your eye, but everything that is labeled as visible on your GPS. So you're on a map screen, you're looking at 2 square miles, but you're on a lake that's 20 square miles, and you have waypoints all around the lake. Every time the map moves, it redraws every waypoint on the lake, whether you can see them in that screen or not. If you have 3,000 waypoints on your unit, right, it's drawing all of them every time. Could be Lake of the Woods, you're on Red Lake. Could be Devil's Lake, you're on Lake Oahe. It's drawing every waypoint that you have marked as visible every time that map moves. If I save them in groups and I hide the groups I'm not using, it lets my GPS and my map update much quicker when it draws that new picture. I hope I explained that properly. So what I would do if I lived here in Devil's Lake, North Dakota, and I only fished in North Dakota, I might have a group that's called the Missouri River. I might have a group that's called Devil's Lake, and I might have a group that's called Lake Sakakawea. When I create this group and go down to add items, it will let me scroll through my waypoint list and use my right arrow key to add my waypoints to the group I created. This is when the sorting feature becomes very important, right? I might not know which one of these waypoint 0001s are for Devil's Lake, Lake Sakakawea, or the Missouri River. But if I sort these by distance, and it will show me how far away they are, sort by distance, and it will also show the waypoints on this little map over here on the right-hand side. I can scroll down, and it says all the data about those waypoints, and it draws the waypoint on the map. I can now pick the ones that go in the predetermined group, hit the right arrow key, it will move them to that group. When I'm all said and done, I'll have 3 groups with waypoints just for that body of water, and I can hide the ones I'm not using and only look at the ones I'm using. Very, very powerful tool to help speed up your Humminbird Helix GPS system. I wish I would have told everybody how to do all this last fall, because you're not going to want to do it right now. Fishing season's coming unless you have a lot of time the next couple of days. It does take a while to sit down and rearrange and create these groups. But I think if you get some downtime, you're going to find that it's very, very beneficial to you to separate your waypoints into groups. I'll be honest with you, I'm still working on it. I have some groups created, but not near enough. And it's something that I keep telling myself I need to spend more time on. Some other things we can do under options: select multiple and, hit the arrow key, delete, export, duplicate, move, show, or hide. Obviously, delete is self-explanatory. If I want to select multiple waypoints and delete, this is where I do it. If I only want to send a handful of waypoints to my fishing buddy, I don't want to share every waypoint in my GPS with my friend, I just want to share the most recent ones from my last fishing trip, I can go to export under select multiple and just export a couple. I can duplicate them. I can move them from where they're at here to another group, and I can hide or show those waypoints. Other options are search by, so I can search my waypoints if I want to find the next one. Select all and, that's the same as multiple and, delete, export, show, or hide, and I can set up all my default choices for saving waypoints. It's that easy, folks, to save your waypoints, to export waypoints to an SD card. And because it's that easy, I would recommend saving copies of your waypoints quite often. I usually save a new file about once a week. I'm adding to my waypoints here on Devil's Lake continuously, and I don't want to have something go wrong where I lost them all, and the last waypoint file I had was from 3 years ago. It only takes a couple of seconds. Put a blank SD card in one of your card slots. It doesn't matter which one. Go to your waypoints, routes, and tracks, options, select all, and export. Takes about 3 seconds. It'll write them all on that card. You can throw that card in the glove box of your boat. You can bring it home and download those waypoints to your computer and save them for later. But it's a really, really good idea to keep a very, very current, updated backup file of all your waypoints on your Humminbird. Moving down the navigation menu tab, we can adjust our default waypoint settings right here as well. The default icon is the little blue dot. That's a pretty general one. If I'm out marking rock piles though for the day and I don't want to edit every waypoint that I save, I can change the default waypoint icon right here to whatever else. There's hundreds of choices, all different fish. There's water skiers, there's anchors, there's environmental things. The list goes on and on. Pick which one you want. Come down. Don't forget to save it. You got to remember that option in every menu category. Don't forget to save your changes, or you won't have them when you go back to use it again. Saved track defaults, same as the waypoint settings. It just it lets you adjust for how you save your tracks. The casting rings, they draw circles around your waypoints so you know how far away you are if you want to cast to that waypoint. Waypoint proximity flags, you can turn those on or off. When you turn those on, that's going to show you how far away you are from your waypoints as you're driving. Waypoint decluttering, the default is on. I would recommend leaving it on. When you turn it off, it puts all the names visible on your map. Every waypoint name, 001, 002, 003, Johnny's favorite rock, Joe's favorite bush, all those waypoint names will be visible, and they cover up the map. When you turn decluttering on, it hides the names until you get very close to the waypoint, and then the name pops up. So it just makes things a little bit easier to see on your contour map. Trolling grid rotation, I don't change that. I leave everything at 0 degrees. It just makes more sense to me. I live life tilted a little bit anyways, and I don't need my GPS tilted anymore. Track point intervals and track minimum distances. The default settings work very, very well here. What this is telling us is that every 1 second, it's putting another dot in our trail, or every 16 feet, it's putting another dot in our trail. The only time I would recommend changing that is if you're making a really, really long drive across a very big lake and you don't want to burn up your whole track. You could set that for maybe 10 seconds or 5 seconds, and it stretches out where those breadcrumbs are dropped on your trail. Course projection line, most commonly is set at standard. You can set it, turn it off, or you can set it to single vector or to your course over ground, speed over ground. And what that does is it changes the length of that line with your speed. Single vector runs all the way off the edge of the map, no matter how far zoomed out you are. And the standard course projection line just goes X number of feet in front of your boat icon. All of those are used to point you in the right direction so you know where your course is going to be if you keep driving in a straight line. Leave continuous navigation mode off. Side imaging navigation. I like to turn that on. That allows my waypoints to show up on my side imaging view. So I'm driving down the lake. I've got a waypoint that I want to find. It's a rock pile. And as I'm driving, that waypoint will actually show up on my sonar screen over the rock pile when I drive by it. So that's a great way to make sure you're driving towards the right waypoint without having your chart view visible. So SI navigation, I leave that on. And that's everything we've got under the navigation tab. So we're moving right along. We're going to finish this up just about right on schedule. So next thing I want to talk about, we're going to move our simulation position right now. I want to go to a lake that you may have a Lake Master map installed for. I am not going to go to Devil's Lake because I have too many waypoints on my graph for us to see anything on Devil's Lake. But what I want you to do is from your chart view, so again, you would press and hold the view button, go to chart, hit the right arrow key, chart view, which we're already in. And I do have a Lake Master map installed. Oh man, my plus and minus isn't working. So this is going to be very, very difficult. I don't even know if I can do this. No. Here, we're going to reset the unit. We're just going to turn it off and turn it back on. Bear with me 1 second, folks, till I get this working correctly. If they had that really cool music, they could play that right now. I could air guitar it for you, but you don't really want to watch that too much. I'll get this fired up. It'll only take a second, folks, and I'll show you exactly what I want to do. Thank you very much for your patience. Technology is a wonderful thing. View, chart view. Now they're working. Perfect. Just don't panic. Like I said before, folks, you can push all kinds of buttons. You can't break it, but it will not always do exactly what you want it to do. So as I said, I'm going to go somewhere where I have a lake master map. And I know I've got the Dakota map in here right now. So we will go to Lake Sakakawea. And now I am starting to see the contours of Lake Sakakawea. I'll zoom in a little further. And what I want to do now is I want to hit my menu button twice. I want to go to the chart setting, and it says set simulation position. So I will drop down to that. I will hit the right arrow key, answer the question, set simulation position, yes. And now when I exit out of everything, including my cursor, I am now simulating on Lake Sakakawea. And I have the Lake Master data in my Helix so I can see the Lake Master map. This is a great way to look at a map without having to worry about is my chart cursor up there or not. Before I continue quickly, I want to shut off my auto chart just so it's not blocking what I want to show. And there we are. We're navigating on Lake Sakakawea, looking at our Lake Master data. There are several features that we have that are exclusive to Humminbird and Lake Master, and that's what I'm going to show. So we'll go to Humminbird chart. We're going to skip auto chart. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. When I go down to shallow water highlight, have it checked. I'm going to turn all the other check marks off. We'll have it checked, and then I want to set the shallow water highlight to 5 feet. 5 feet. 5 feet is a good number. What we're looking at now is all of the spots that are 5 feet or less. This is mainly used for safety. So it looks like there's a sunken island out here and another sunken island out here that you may not notice if you don't have your shallow water highlight on. There's a long point that sticks out right there. These are all spots that you do not want to drive your boat, and you can adjust that to whatever number you want. I feel pretty safe with 5 feet. If I'm driving in water deeper than 5 feet, I don't feel like I'm going to hit anything. The next option is highlight number 1. I want to turn that on, and I'm going to make a scenario that I caught a walleye in 12 feet of water. To me, that's enough. I caught one fish in 12 feet of water. You may want to catch 3 or 4 fish in 12 feet of water, and that's okay. But if I catch a fish in 12 feet of water, I want to set my highlight number 1 minimum to 11 feet. I want to set my highlight number 1 maximum to 13 feet. And that is going to show me all of the water that's approximately 12 feet deep. So I will exit out, and now I can see all of the water that's 12 feet deep. Folks, I'm telling you what, this really makes it easy when you figure out the depth the fish are in to stay in the same depth. It never fails. More than once a summer, I get a youngster in the boat that runs out of food, runs out of battery on the iPad, runs out of sunscreen. They're hot, they're sweaty, they're tired. I got to find a way to entertain them. I will highlight the depth that I want to fish in. I will hand them the remote control for my trolling motor, and I will put them in the driver's seat and say, hey, Charlie, I want you to keep that boat inside that green band. If it starts to get too far to the right, steer to the left. If it gets too far left, steer to the right. It's amazing how good kids are at playing video games because that's all they're doing. And if I remind that youngster every time we catch a fish that that was all because of him, all of a sudden they feel part of the game again. They drive inside that colored band, and we catch fish all day long. And if a 7 or 8 year old kid can drive my boat inside that color band, any one of us can drive our boat inside that color band. So once you find the zone, you can highlight minimum and maximum ranges, color in the zone that you want, keep your boat in the green band, and you're going to catch a lot more fish. So the next thing I want to talk about now, I want us to go back and take that shallow water highlight, and I want to change the 5 feet to 11 feet. And then I want you to exit out, and I want you to go back, and I want you to look at that map. And I think all of us would agree that very rarely do you just catch fish because you happen to be in 12 feet. You catch fish because there's some kind of irregularity in the bottom at 12 feet. There might be a point. There might be an inside turn. There's some kind of irregularity. And if you look at this map now, it becomes really easy to see those irregularities. There's one right here, down here at 7 feet. I want to go ahead and switch. There you go. One at 7 right here where this number 7 is. We got a nice point. We've got some subtle points inside here. Let's just say we want to cruise around the lake though and find another point in that depth. Look right there. Boom. There's another one that sticks right out. You can see it very easily. We keep scrolling down the lake looking for more points. More points. There's some sunken islands, not so much up. There's another point right here. It doesn't take long to find points, cups, inside turns by kind of cheating the system. We used our shallow water as up to our specified depth, then shaded our depth, and then we used the Lake Master Blue for the rest of the contour map, and it makes it real easy. Here's some sunken islands if you wanted to fish really shallow. Makes it real easy to find your next fishing spot. Some other options with the Humminbird chart tab, and again, these are all specific to just Humminbird and Lake Master. If you have a map with overlay capabilities, here's your overlay options. I can go in and I can turn on the map overlay. Sometimes I'll have aerial photography of a certain lake, and this is where you can adjust your overlays and your overlay transparencies. If you have questions about that, some of you may have questions specific to Devil's Lake about the 1990 data, please shoot me an email. I'll walk you through all that later. Let's see. Next thing we want to talk about on Humminbird chart is auto chart. All right, so we are going to go into the auto chart menu. We'll hit the right arrow key. We will turn auto chart on, and then we will set record to on. We are now making our own contour map, and you might want to zoom in a little bit just to get a little bit better view of what we're looking at there. So as you drive, you are taking your GPS location and your depth, and it is plotting a map. And while you're driving around, you will see this change right before your eyes. This is the best contour map you can have because it's real-time live data. It's based on the now. What I like to do is adjust my auto chart transparency when I'm first starting so I can see through it. You'll see in this instance, and yes, we are simulating, that this rock pile or this hump that we noticed when we're mapping does not appear on my Lake Master map. If the contour lines from my auto chart map and the Lake Master matched each other, I would just move on and not make a map. But in this case, because they are not the same, I want to investigate and make a map. This simulator is probably not the smartest way to make a map. If I were to intentionally map structure, I would do it like I'm mowing the grass, up and back, up and back, up and back. And then when I'm done, I would go side to side, side to side, side to side. That eliminates any of the error that might be made when you're turning or going different directions. But you can see all you have to do is color in where you want your map to be, and it draws an incredible map right before your eyes. We'll turn the transparency down, and then we will go to auto chart options. This map is a little bit challenging to read because it's all in one depth range. Down here is our colored values based on a scale of 0 to 50 feet. This map, though, doesn't go all the way to 0, and it seems to go well past 50 feet. We can adjust our range up here in the options. So what I would do is take a good hard look at this map, and it looks like, oh, the shallowest spot is probably 26, 27 feet. So I'm going to set my minimum range to 20, we'll say 6 feet. The maximum range of anything that looks of interest to me is right around, I don't know, 50 feet. So we'll leave it right at 50 feet. So what you notice now is that there's a secondary hump off of one side that was kind of hard to see before. There's finger points all the way around. There's a nice inside turn there, and there are actually 2 small humps on the top of that rock pile instead of just one. So by reducing the amount of range we're trying to display in the map, we can change those colors. And if we want it to be more dramatic, we can go in and change it again. We can go to our options, and we'll make that maximum range a little less, or make it more. Wherever you like the colors to be spread out to make it easier for you to interpret. Again, there is no right or wrong. It's whatever is easiest for you to see. The other thing that's really nice about auto chart is we can display data that is not depth. We can go into our menu again under auto chart, and we can display bottom layers. Check that, bottom type, bottom hardness. We're not going to have that transparent because we want to see it. Then we're going to come down here to hardness options. Minimum hardness, maximum hardness. This is our color palette. Dark black is the hardest bottom. As it goes to red, it's not quite as hard, and the lightest blue is the softest bottom. What I would recommend is just start adjusting your maximum hardness until you start to see a nice colorful bottom hardness map. And now we know not just where the shallowest water was, but where the hardest bottom is. Well, why is hard bottom important to us as fishermen? Especially where we live in the upper Midwest. Walleye, smallmouth bass, northern pike, even perch in a lot of lakes, they like to be around rocks and hard bottom. Hard bottom is not always the shallowest spot. It's amazing how many times I'll go over a shallow spot and the top is soft, mud, maybe sand, but as I get off the deep edge, that's where the hard bottom is. Now I can see where the hard bottom is independent of depth. You can also do this for vegetation. I do not map vegetation very often. Vegetation changes way too often, so I don't display vegetation much. One really neat thing about this whole process, when you're auto charting, it's storing all that data for you. You don't have to map an area again to get bottom hardness. It's saved in that original map data. You're just displaying it now, okay? So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to turn off the bottom layer so it's not there anymore. And I'm actually going to hide the auto chart for what we're going to talk about next. Oh, before we move along, how much data can we save? Your Humminbird Helix head unit will save 8 hours of mapping data, 8 hours. So you can map for about a day, and it saves it. If you want to save more than 8 hours, you need what's called a zero line card made by Lake Master or Humminbird. They cost about $100. That card will store a lifetime of mapping information. They say 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for 40 years. But I'm telling you right now, you'll never fill that up with map data. What's really cool, you put that zero line card in. If you already had data on your Humminbird, it will automatically switch it to your zero line card. As long as the zero line card is in there, it will save your mapping data to the zero line card. Remember to stop auto chart before you shut your Humminbird off though, or you will lose that day's data. So you have to turn off auto chart for it to save to the chip. If you take that chip out, it automatically reverts back to storing in the head unit. And then next time you put the chip in, it automatically moves it to the zero line card. So that's a good thing. If you map a lot, you're going to want to have a zero line card. It's really, really fun. It's very beneficial. It's amazing how many unique things I have found traveling all around the country, especially here in Devil's Lake. Some rock piles that I have maps of that I'm sure some farmer put out there maybe even 100 years ago that are now underwater, and I might have the only map of it. I kind of doubt that, but there's always a chance. So we're winding down. We're getting close to the end, and the last thing I want to talk about, maybe not all of you have access to, but if you have an iPilot Link trolling motor connected to your Humminbird Helix, you have a one boat network. I want to talk quickly about some of the iPilot Link features. You have to have Link connected to a Humminbird for these features to work. The first one, or first what we have to do to see it work, is we have to hit our menu button twice, scroll across the top to accessories, go down to iPilot settings, and turn on iPilot navigation. Okay, once we do that, we'll see several choices. The one I want to talk about, or a couple I want to talk about, prop auto on. What that means, if it is turned on, as soon as we tell the Helix to do something, the motor will turn on automatically and instantly begin navigating. We will not have to manually turn the propeller on. That's a nice feature, but be careful. If the boat is pointed 90 degrees from the direction you're facing, it's going to make a 90-degree turn right away. The other thing I want to talk about real quick here is the autopilot mode. There are two modes of autopilot, legacy and advanced. A lot of you may have tried the advanced mode and not cared for it too much. I'm going to tell you straight up that the legacy mode with the iPilot Link technology works much better than the advanced mode. You'll be much happier running in legacy mode, okay? So that's that. We will now exit out of all our menus. I want you to take your cursor, place it on any contour line relatively close to your current position, and hit the Go To button. The first thing you're going to see will say Go To Position. And if you wanted your boat to just drive to that position, you can select Go To Position with the prop auto on, whatever speed your trolling motor is set at, and you will drive right to that cursor. What we want to do is follow that contour. We're going to select Follow the Contour, hit the right arrow key. We will now get a series of choices. You'll have an orange line and a blue line, and when you look at your map, you'll have an orange line and a blue line. Whichever one of those you want to follow, you'll select that color and hit the right arrow. So I will select orange and hit the right arrow. The boat will now drive in a straight line to where our cursor was, and it will follow that contour till it gets to the end of the yellow line. You can then select if you want to continue or not. Very, very good feature. You know what contour you've been catching fish on. You want the boat to follow the contour, so all you got to do is fish. There you go. One other thing you might have noticed on that follow the contour menu is it said contour offset. You do not have to follow the contour line right on top of that contour line. You can move your boat over a predetermined distance, left or right, from the contour line and follow the line still. Why would that be important? Devil's Lake, North Dakota, middle of June. The weed edge is 6 feet. So I want to follow the 6-foot contour, but I'm casting jigs. And I don't want to be right over the 6-foot depth. I want to be off on the side. I know I can cast approximately 75 feet. I would set the contour line to move 75 feet off the weed edge, follow the contour line, and I would just make my regular cast knowing that my jig is landing very close to the edge of the weeds. Works very, very well that way. To stop following anything, hit the menu button once, cancel navigation, select yes, and we are now back to normal mode. All of the other iPilot Link features can be accessed from the Go To button. We have the circle mode. If you use circle mode without the cursor up, it takes your present position and it draws a circle around that at a predetermined distance and a direction you want. If you have your cursor up there, which we will do, actually, this is a perfect example right here. I see a shallow rock pile right there, and I'll zoom in so you can see it. And this might be an awesome place to troll spinners around the edge of that rock pile. So with my cursor there, I'll hit the go to button. I will come down here to circle mode, hit the right arrow key, circle at cursor, right arrow key, and I want to make a circle, let's say we want to make it 50 feet, 70 feet around. So I'm going to go around the outer edge of that rock pile, and I want to do it counterclockwise, so I'll pick orange, and I'll hit the right arrow. The boat is now going to go to that spot. When it gets there, and we're in simulator mode, so it's not going to do it. When it gets there, it will go counterclockwise around that rock pile on a 70-foot radius while I just hold on to my bottom bouncer and spinner and catch walleye after walleye after walleye. When the circle feature first came out, I'll be the first one to admit that I laughed out loud. Why would I ever want to go in a circle around anything and fish? I'm just going to get dizzy. Well, a brush pile that you want to cast to, a bridge piling that you want to vertical jig, a rock pile that you want to troll spinners around. It's absolutely amazing to me how many times I use the circle feature now that I realize how powerful it is. It actually works very, very well. So we will cancel our navigation one more time. We'll exit, go to again. You can turn your autopilot on or off through this menu. The next thing I want to talk about is backtrack. Backtrack is exactly what it sounds like. You've made that perfect trolling pass right down a flooded road in Devil's Lake or down the edge of Knight's Reef on Lake of the Woods. And you want to turn around and follow it perfectly because you caught 6 or 7 fish in a half a mile and you're thinking, man, I'll never duplicate that again on my own. Highlight backtrack, hit the right arrow key, and hold on tight. You're going to want to make sure you're paying attention, and you're going to want to make sure that you've got all your lines reeled in because the boat is going to do a 180-degree turn. There we go. We're off course. It's going to do a 180-degree turn, and it's going to go right back down that trolling pass at whatever speed you tell it to go. And again, all you have to do is hold on to rods and reels and field bites and set hooks and net fish. The iPilot Link navigation is so big of an advantage nowadays compared to what we had before. It's actually frustrating as a tournament angler. Years ago, the best tournament anglers were the guys that kept their boats over the fish the longest. Now anybody can keep their boat over the fish the longest. We just hit spot lock, autopilot, follow the contour, circle mode, backtrack. I use that stuff every day, folks. Don't think for a minute that the pros don't use this stuff. We all are using it because it works. So again, I will cancel navigation. Yes. And the last thing I want to talk about before we go is what I call your virtual remote. If you short press your power key, you will get what appears to be a remote control right on your screen. When you see this, the right arrow now steers your boat to the right. The left arrow, if you watch these arrows, they light up, steers right, steers left. If I want to speed up the propeller, I hit the plus minus. If I want to slow down, I hit the minus. Plus and minus, speed up, slow down. You can turn the prop on or off. I can trim or stow my Altera from right here. And I can also turn on or off the cruise control. If your boat was in spot lock mode, this is also where you would jog. So let me do that once. I will go back into, go to, we'll spot lock at the vessel. Then you will see that this says jog, right or left. And that is how we would jog. Every time you hit that button, 5 feet. So hit the right arrow twice, you're gonna move over 10 feet. Hit the plus button once, you'll move ahead 5 feet. Left arrow 3 times, left 15 feet. But that is where you would access the jog feature. Last summer, this is honest to goodness truth, when the end of the year came and I had to clean the boat up to sell it down the road to a friend of mine just outside of Fargo, it took me half a day to find my remote control because it had been that long since I actually used it. I used a Minn Kota Ultrex on the front of my boat, foot pedal, and I steered and did everything else for almost the entire summer right through the head unit of my Helix unit. So it's 7:32. I got this dialed in, folks. I got the timing down pretty good. I think I've done this a few times. One more time, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I apologize for a couple little technical glitches along the way. Like I said, I'm a fairly good fisherman and lucky a lot at fishing. I'm not so good and not so lucky with technology. We've muddled our way through this far. Got to give a big shout out again to Ben, my buddy over there in Grand Forks. Ben, I know I don't get over there enough to see you. We're only 90 miles apart. But thanks again for giving up your evening tonight, answering questions, guiding people through the seminar. Shayla, the event coordinator, thank you too for setting this up. And my good friend Sarah down in the corporate office, 2 nights in a row, I kept you out until after 7 o'clock. So hopefully you're getting enough rest. I'd hate for you to not be performing when you get back to the corporate office in the morning. I want to give everyone my email address before I sign off for the evening. Please reach out with questions. Many of you have been messaging me on Facebook. That works very well too. But please understand, it's crunch time now. I leave for my first tournament in less than 14 days. I've got several more seminars to give, a trip to Billings, North Dakota to make, and a boat sitting right outside the shop door here waiting to get all of my Humminbird and Minn Kota stuff installed. So the next couple of days, I'm not going to be online as much as I'd like to be, but I will answer your emails as soon as I can. And my email address is this. It's my name, Johnny, spelled Johnnnie, at GON as in Nancy, D as in dog, T as in Tom, C as in cat.com. That's Johnny at GONDTC.com. And again, fire those questions off to me, folks. I'll be glad to answer all of them that I can. If I don't know the answer, odds are I can find someone that does. Don't forget, in the next day, you will get a link to view this video again and again and again and again. Not that you want to stare at me all that much, but it will be nice to follow along and practice all the things that we learned. I hope I run into a lot of you this summer. Make sure you stay high. Ask me how the fishing is. Maybe tell me how you're doing. I love to see pictures, love to see smiles. Hope to see all of you on the water. And I'm going to sign off. Have a great evening. We'll see you later. Take care.